दुनिया में हमारे देश में मोबिलिटी का जो फ्यूचर है वो इलेक्ट्रिक है, ये बात तो सबको पता है। ये सब जानते हैं कि इन नेक्स्ट 5 to 10 years मोस्ट व्हीकल्स विल बी इलेक्ट्रिक और उसी से हम लोग जाएंगे इधर उधर। पोल्यूशन कम होता है, एनवायरनमेंट के लिए अच्छा है, सस्ता पड़ता है। पर ये सब होगा कैसे और कौन करेगा इसको, इसके बारे में किसी को कुछ नहीं पता है। एवरीबडी इज क्लूलेस, एवरीबडी इज जस्ट होपिंग समथिंग टू कम अलोंग। और सच बताऊं तो ये सारा ये दीज आर मडी वाटर्स। अभी इसमें बहुत सारे एक्सपेरिमेंट चल रहे हैं, अभी इसमें बहुत सारे लोग जी जान लगा के कोशिश कर रहे हैं। एंड वन सच पर्सन is my guest today, Sayantan Chakraborti, who is CEO and co-founder of goEgo network, जो कि इंडिया का एक अपने हिंदुस्तान में एक ऐसा नेटवर्क डेवलप कर रहे हैं जहां पर आपकी गाड़ी, जो इलेक्ट्रिक गाड़ी आप लेने वाले हैं, उसको चार्ज कहाँ करोगे, उसका भी सोल्यूशन चाहिए। सो दैट्स व्हाट वी आर गोइंग टू टॉक अबाउट टुडे। और हमारे इंडिया में ईवीज का क्या फ्यूचर है, अभी लेनी चाहिए कि नहीं, थोड़े साल रुकना चाहिए क्या, चार्जिंग कैसे होगा, कहीं पर होता है स्टेशन, कहीं पर नहीं होता है, घर पे चार्ज होता है तो ठीक से नहीं हो पाता। ऑल दीज क्वेश्चंस विल बी आंसर्ड। सायंतन, गुड मॉर्निंग, वेलकम टू द शो।
Good morning, Tarun, and thanks for having me here. I'm very excited to talk to you and your viewers.
हम बात करेंगे कि ये सब कैसे होगा, लेकिन पहले आप बताइए कि आप इस चक्कर में कहाँ से पड़ गए।
Well, yeah. So interestingly, so I used to live abroad. I lived abroad for over 10 years. Last I was in the Europe in the Netherlands, and so my first encounter with the EV was I was traveling to the US, and then when I came back, airport say I took an EV taxi back to my home, and it was a short journey, 10 minute, 15 minute का journey था. But the feeling I got sitting in an EV, that was my first hand experience sitting in an EV. It was beyond doubt that EVs are coming in a big way, and I had no doubt about the fact that these IC vehicles will definitely get replaced with EVs. So that was, in fact, my first exposure, गाड़ी में, that was the EV. और while I was traveling back home, I think I was just in awe क्योंकि गाड़ी was so smooth, no vibration, and I was talking to the taxi wala, and taxi wala बोल रहा था कि he had recently moved to an EV. So of course he had his own challenges. So he was actually complaining about the fact that there was no charging stations nearby, and वो उनका था कि airport वाला route I think was given to them. So they had one big charging park, Amsterdam airport के बाहर, but it used to always be full because the government had given a major subsidy to these taxi wallahs for EVs, and they got it, I think, Teslas in half the price.
Oh.
So there was a big push from the government, and then of course the infrastructure takes some time to catch up because गाड़ियाँ आती है, and then the demand increases, and then धीरे धीरे the infrastructure for charging is set up. So when I went back home, I think I was speaking to a couple of my friends, घर जाके, and I said, the product, the EV itself, I had, no doubt that it's a technically superior product. It's much more economical. It's much more, scientifically also. I think the innovation, if you see how innovations have happened, if you look back in history, I think the innovations that actually caught the mainstream are usually ones that solve a big efficiency problem. It's usually that if you can solve a big efficiency problem, those innovations usually succeed over time. And I thought EV was one of them. I still strongly believe in EV. So I drive myself an EV, and also abroad I was driving. So then I thought about it. Ki India, mein, if you look at the automobile companies, apne desh mein, I think they've been doing fabulously well. They're well known. If you look at the Tata Group, the Mahindras, all over the world, I think they're very respected, valued. Also, the foreign companies that have come in India and invested in automobiles. So I remember मेरे बचपन में जब हम when we were growing up, so I think we had what two options, right? So it started with that, and then धीरे धीरे जब global products आने लगे, I was in college back then. मुझे clearly याद है कि the Honda cities that were getting launched globally, उससे 2 generation पहले की Honda City we were
हाँ,
launching in
इंडिया में
India.
आता था, राइट।
That is no more the case, right? So now you get the product on day one here. So I think automobile industry has definitely moved forward. So I was thinking that when the EV problem has to be solved, I think अपने लोग अपनी companies, they're very well equipped. If you look at the kind of engineering staff they have, the R&D that they have, and I think you see it today firsthand. अगर आप देखोगे Tata Motors, last 2.5 3 years में, they've actually built a product of global quality. I can tell you that. If you look at the Tata Motor गाड़ी, Nexon देख लो आप, Tigor देख लो, in the next 2 years, I'm just beyond doubt that we will be competing with the best of the EV companies in the world.
Yeah.
So that capability was already there in India. And what I thought is, one of the things that is probably not there today is the EV charging station technology. So if you look at a typical EV kind of industry, right? So अपने petrol and diesel cars जो हम चलाते हैं आज के दिन, अगर आप देखोगे, the entire fuel management, everything is on board on the car. So fuel injection वगैरह सब कुछ गाड़ी के अंदर होता है. In an EV, there's a component that now sits outside the vehicle. And मैंने कहा, it's not natural for a automobile company to build that technology because they will have to focus on the vehicle.
Yeah.
Because vehicles are getting smarter. There's a lot of software in it now. So a lot of new things, right, in the vehicle itself, which will take a lot of resources from these automobile companies because they'll have to work on the vehicle. And I
Right.
said, why not start working on the charging stations? क्योंकि आज के दिन if you look at a typical EV charging, right, what happens is उसमें the charging station actually talks to the car. And दोनों negotiate करते हैं कि कितना पावर भेजना है गाड़ी कितना पावर ले सकता है. There's a lot of software play outside the vehicle now.
Right. Right.
And that I thought was an opportunity because the idea was to always start something in India and build something for the globe. So I think we've done it now a couple of times. There's some very good examples today in India mein, who are building products for the global audiences. So that was also my ambition when I started off.
Right. तो जब आपने ये शुरू किया था तब बहुत कम गाड़ियां हुआ करती थी इंडिया में इलेक्ट्रिक. आपको ये लगा कि यार इसमें मेरे पास अभी जो कस्टमर बेस है ऑफ कोर्स बढ़ने वाला है आगे, लेकिन अभी बहुत कम है. हाउ डू आई स्टार्ट एंड देयर इज अ रिस्क फैक्टर इन्वॉल्व्ड बिकॉज द टेक्नोलॉजी इज अभी तक किसी को पता नहीं है इसके बारे में कैसे ये शेप अप होगा, ऐसे लग रहा था आपको?
Of course, of course. So in fact, let me also tell you कि जब मैंने सोचा था starting में, and then we had a small team that we set up abroad in Europe. So I have two more co-founders. मेरे और दो co-founders हैं, जिसमें the third co-founder is also was based out of in the Netherlands, and he was staying there for a long time with his family. He has also moved back. So initial days जब हम बात कर रहे थे, I can tell you that India में nobody was even talking about electric vehicles. It was through 2.5, 3 years back we started the company. But I started conceiving this concept, this project around 4 years back. तो 4 साल पहले इंडिया में EV के बारे में कोई बात नहीं कर रहा था. There was no discussion happening.
Right.
And when we started thinking about it and my project, when I started working, we built the initial prototype in the Netherlands. It was mostly the software platform. Hardware we had not started because my background is from software, so we started there. And I used to come to India every 2 years, twice a year. Apart from the only exception was the Corona period. But मैं 15 साल से बाहर हूँ, but मैं हर साल 2 बार आता हूँ India. And I spent some time here. And then when we started thinking about this project, I came to India and I spent a good 2 months, talking to a lot of people from industry. I met Gadkari ji at the time. उनके घर पे जाके मिला. I was running after people just to get a sense कि what is the government thinking, because I know that India had committed to climate change and then we have given concrete commitments to the world. So मुझे ये जानना था कि are they looking at EV mobility also as a play in this contribution play? Because एक तो था कि renewable power sources में there was already a lot of discussion happening, there was a lot of push, and आज आपको results भी दिखते हैं. If you see आज solar का हमारा जो percentage increase in contribution, it has solely happened from that time, after the Paris Convention and when we committed to it. So when I started talking to these people, I understood that there's already a lot of discussions that are happening behind, the government closed doors, corridors. में चल रहा है already. People are talking about it. And at the time, मुझे याद है जब मैं मिला उनको, I met a couple of government ministers and bureaucrats. And I was surprised to hear that there were a lot of companies from abroad that were actually coming and talking to them about EV charging, which was not known to me. News में नहीं था. So then I thought, boss, this is the right thing. We are on the right path. We have to keep going, and that's how it all started.
वंडरफुल, वंडरफुल. पर एक आम आदमी की नज़र से अगर देखूँ तो मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा है कि ये किस तरह से होगा. फॉर एग्जांपल छोटी-छोटी चीज़ें जैसे जो स्विच है, अगर अभी मैं एक पेट्रोल, डीज़ल या फिर एक सीएनजी गाड़ी चला रहा हूँ, तो वहाँ से जो मैं स्विच करूँगा, पेट्रोल में क्या होता है एक 5 मिनट का टाइम लगता है फॉर इट टू गेट फिल्ड. बट व्हेन इट कम्स टू ईवी द प्रॉब्लम इज इट टेक्स अ लॉन्ग टाइम. और अभी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जैसे आप बता रहे हैं कि आप अभी इसको बना रहे हैं, तो ये किस हाउ विल यू सॉल्व दैट प्रॉब्लम, सायंतन?
So a couple of things, Tarun. So very pertinent question, and I'll tell you, in our sales onboarding program, this is the first question that we actually train our staff on. Because this
हाँ
is a very obvious question that comes कि भैया आपका ईवी चार्जिंग स्टेशन कितनी देर में चार्ज करेगा एक ईवी?
हाँ हाँ
क्योंकि मेरी गाड़ी है 5 मिनट में आई फिल अप द टैंक और मैं निकल जाता हूँ काम पे. So the answer to this question is, and it'll take you a while, and your audience is a while to think like that. Because I had the same problem. Because you usually try to compare to your existing situation. मेरा भी वैसी था, मतलब मैं भी वैसी सोचता था starting में. But I'll tell you the secret behind EV. So if you look at oil, right, petrol, diesel, अगर आप देखोगे, the distribution of these fuels, right, is limited to these retail outlets of these oil companies. अगर आप देखोगे आपको यू वोंट गेट पेट्रोल आपको घर के नीचे अपार्टमेंट के नीचे नहीं मिलेगा, आपको पेट्रोल आपके ऑफिस के नीचे रेडियो वन के नीचे नहीं मिलेगा आपको.
हाँ
But electricity is available everywhere. So you got to for once, right, shut your eyes, think about the fact that you don't need to go to the petrol pump anymore. तो
yeah
आपका जो हफ्ते में एक दिन दो दिन का जो ट्रिप लगता है, डिपेंडिंग ऑन कितनी दूर आप चलाते हो गाड़ी, you need to stand in line in queue for probably 10 minutes 20 minutes, and there's a detour क्योंकि आप जा रहे हो शायद, let's assume कि आप घर से ऑफिस जा रहे हो and your fuel is low, तो आप जाओगे पेट्रोल पंप में रुकोगे वहां पेट्रोल भरोगे, you will avoid even that waiting time, and you
हाँ
will avoid the 5 minutes as well. I'll tell you why. Because electric vehicles can get charged everywhere and anywhere where your vehicle is parked.
yeah
क्योंकि आपको इलेक्ट्रिसिटी हर जगह मिल रहा है.
right
So of course there's a problem, and I'll talk about the problem as well. But to start with, आपके पास इलेक्ट्रिसिटी रेडियो वन के ऑफिस के नीचे पार्किंग में है, आपके पास इलेक्ट्रिसिटी घर पे है अगर आप बंगले में रह रहे हो, अगर आप अपार्टमेंट में रह रहे हो आपके पार्किंग में इलेक्ट्रिसिटी इज अवेलेबल, हर जगह इलेक्ट्रिसिटी इज अवेलेबल टुडे.
हाँ
So the only thing that is missing today is a charging station.
हाँ
So our opportunity as goEgo network is to install charging stations in as many places as possible. Every parking space is potentially an opportunity for our company to install a charging station. Now
हाँ
एक बार चार्जिंग स्टेशन आपका लग गया, so you have to understand कि अगर typically आप आपका एग्जांपल ले लो, because your viewers know you better than me. So if you talk about RJ Tarun is probably living in a house somewhere in Pune or I don't know where. But अगर आप वहां जाते हो, घर घर पे जाते हो, आप शाम को आपकी गाड़ी लगी रहती है, you don't take out the car till morning, right? तो overnight usually everyone's car is parked घर पे,
हम्म
तो वहां पे आपका स्लो चार्जिंग होता रहेगा रात को, राइट? तो आप हर दिन शाम को आओगे वहां पार्किंग में, एज लॉन्ग एज यू हैव अ फैसिलिटी. आपके
right
पास फैसिलिटी नहीं है, आई अंडरस्टैंड दैट्स जेन्युइनली अ प्रॉब्लम, दैट्स द प्रॉब्लम वी आर ट्राइंग टू सॉल्व एज अ
हाँ
कंपनी. बट
हाँ
अगर आपने गाड़ी लगा दी, तो आपको आपका गाड़ी वैसे ही खड़ा रहता है वहां पे. आप जब रेडियो वन आते हो, आपकी गाड़ी आई थिंक 8 to 10 hours 12 hours, आई डोंट नो हाउ लॉन्ग
yeah
यू वर्क, बट टिपिकली लाइक समवन लाइक मी आई वर्क फॉर 12 hours नाउ. सो मेरी गाड़ी खड़ी रहती है 12 घंटे. इफ आई गो टू अ मॉल विद माय फैमिली फॉर अ मूवी, मेरी गाड़ी वहां 3 घंटे पार्क रहती है. Every place where your car is parked is when the car will charge.
hmm
You will never stop at a petrol pump and charge your car, usually,
yeah
unless you're traveling, let's say, from Mumbai to Bangalore or Mumbai to, wherever, Pune. On the highway, probably you need those kind of solutions. But because the magic with EVs is electricity is available everywhere, so you can charge whenever you want that.
राइट अच्छा एक क्वेश्चन और भी लोगों के दिमाग में आ सकता है कि मेरे घर पे 15 वोल्ट का सॉकेट लगा हुआ है स्लो चार्ज जिसको बोलते हैं वो तो मैं कर ही रहा हूँ व्हेन एंड वेयर एम आई गोइंग टू यूज योर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जो आप बिल्ड कर रहे हैं आप इसको बहुत सारे सोसाइटीज में अपार्टमेंट्स में भी लगा रहे हैं पार्किंग स्पेसेस में भी लगा रहे हैं तो इन दोनों में क्या डिफरेंस होता है
So big difference. And then there's a technical answer to it, but I will not go for the technical answer because your audiences and you warned me already that you have to talk in layman's terms. So I will try to talk in layman's terms. So I think I'll start with saying that there's a problem that is currently not evident in India because EVs are just coming. It's an early market, नया market है. उतनी गाड़ियां नहीं है आज के दिन. But आप ये सोचो, today if you drive let's say a petrol car or a petrol scooter and आप जाते हो उसे बेचने to a second hand dealer, तो second hand dealer क्या करता है, वो गाड़ी खोलता है, इंजन स्टार्ट करके साउंड सुनता है, he'll take a short ride and then आपको एक प्राइस कोट करेगा of the vehicle, right? In an electric vehicle, the only thing they do is they will take a multimeter and they'll try to see how the health of your battery, क्योंकि बैटरी का cost of, when you compare it to the total cost of the vehicle, it differs from 40 से 60% के बीच में. So it's a massive component in the vehicle, right? So वो प्रॉब्लम आज के दिन इंडिया में आपको देखने नहीं मिलता बिकॉज गाड़ियां उतनी पुरानी हुई नहीं अब तक. बट
हाँ
लाइक इफ यू टॉक अबाउट यूरोप,
हाँ
यूरोप में 5 साल पुरानी गाड़ियां, 7 साल 8 साल पुरानी गाड़ियां आज के दिन सेकंड हैंड मार्केट में जा रही है. And then what people really try to gauge is कि आपका battery का health क्या है, and then they will quote your price. That's just exactly that, because the suspension and everything else on an electric vehicle is as comparable to a IC vehicle. There is not a much of difference there. So the point I was trying to make is, if you look at a 15 ampere socket, so there are two problems there. So 15 ampere sockets are not, or 5 ampere sockets are not built for a long time of lengthy use of high current. That's not how they have been designed. तो आप अगर फ्रिज भी आपका देख लो ना, फ्रिज इज अ हेवी इक्विपमेंट इन टर्म्स ऑफ इलेक्ट्रिकल्स. फ्रिज का आपका जो कंप्रेसर है, इन द ओल्ड डेज आपको सुनाई देता था ऑन हो रहा है, ऑफ हो रहा है, ऑन हो रहा है, ऑफ हो रहा है. आजकल इन द न्यूअर फ्रिजेस आपको सुनाई नहीं देता है, बट यू कैन फील द वाइब्रेशन. तो दीस कंप्रेसर्स आर नॉट ड्रॉइंग अ लॉट ऑफ पावर कॉन्स्टेंटली. बट आप जब इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल का बैटरी चार्ज करते हो, इट एक्चुअली कीप्स ड्रॉइंग पावर फॉर अ लॉन्ग टाइम, फॉर 4 hours to 8 hours, डिपेंडिंग ऑन इफ इट्स अ टू व्हीलर और फोर व्हीलर, राइट. सो ये जो सॉकेट्स बने, दे आर नॉट मेड फॉर दिस काइंड ऑफ एप्लीकेशन. अब दूसरी बात, इफ यू लुक एट अपना जो ग्रिड है, सो क्या होता है, ग्रिड इज, वी ऑल नो देयर आर फ्लक्चुएशंस ग्रिड में. द ग्रिड्स आर नॉट स्टेबल. आप आज इंडिया की बात कर रहे हो, इवन इन यूरोप, in many countries it's actually banned to use 3-pin sockets in many countries for EV charging. अब इसमें प्रॉब्लम क्या होता है, सी द बैटरी, अब नाउ वी सी अ लॉट ऑफ वीडियोस, कभी-कभी व्हाट्सएप पे आजकल देयर सर्कुलेटिंग वीडियोस जहां पे गाड़ी आग लग जाता है गाड़ी को, आई मीन दोस काइंड ऑफ वीडियोस की ईवी में आग लग गया. नाउ दैट्स एन एक्सट्रीम सिचुएशन, दैट्स लाइक 99.999% नहीं होगा, बट देयर इज अ सिचुएशन जहां थर्मल रनअवे होता है एंड बैटरी में आग लग जाता है. बट apart from that extreme situation, right, the batteries do get affected when you charge over normal sockets. क्योंकि क्या होता है, जब एक spike आता है, now the batteries, the onboard vehicle system, it cannot manage that spike immediately, so that spike gets actually forwarded into the battery charging cycles. So it does have impact, but it slowly degrades the battery. It's not that हमेशा आग लग जाएगा बैटरी में, but in fact those batteries are designed in such a way कि आग नहीं लगे, कभी भी लगता नहीं है. There's only 1 or 2 cases, where there will be that kind of incident. But that's, if you compare it to an IC vehicle में there are even more instances of, but what happens sometimes is, people talk about percentages. So आपके पास 10 EVs है मार्केट में, और उसमें से एक में आग लग गया, तो people say अरे 10% failure rate. But that's because the numbers are low. So I think there's a lot of lobbying behind, IC vehicles. So those stories come up. But the point I was trying to make is that the 3-pin sockets are not safe. They don't ensure the longevity of your battery, which is one of the most critical and most expensive components of an EV. So the EVSE systems that we make actually entirely take care of safety. So there are multiple measures that we have inside, and we build our own controller boards that actually talk to vehicles and make sure they are not providing more current than what is required by the vehicle. So they actually throttles it down. So जैसे if you talk about a MG or a Nexon, जब आप हमारा चार्जिंग स्टेशन लगाओगे, it does not immediately start providing power. तो गाड़ी से एक्चुअली देयर इज अ नेगोशिएशन दैट हैपेंस, जहां पे गाड़ी बोलता है चार्जिंग स्टेशन को कि आप मुझे भेजो और इतना ही पावर भेजो, क्योंकि मेरा बैटरी आज 80% फुल है, वर्सेस अगर मेरा बैटरी 20% फुल है तो गाड़ी बोलेगा कि मुझे यू गिव मी मोर पावर. So this kind of intelligence has to be built for a long term kind of play, because India is an early market, and आज there are a lot of vehicles, two wheelers, which are very low end two wheelers. अब उसमें the company only provides a 3-pin socket. So that is a good solution to start with, because early market hai, the volumes are not there, so companies are making the best out of what they can do right now. But I can assure you, Tarun, that when the industry is evolving now, and in the next 2 years, 1.5-2 years, the only way to charge an EV will be a EVSE, the charging station, and not the 3-pin plug. So that will go away completely.
Okay, understood. ये बताइए कि जो पूरा आपका सेटअप है, is what is the future? हम उसको, कुछ लोग ऐसे भी होंगे क्या जो आपका वो चार्जिंग स्टेशन खरीद लेंगे, या फिर इट विल ऑलवेज बी अ रेंटेड फैसिलिटी जो कहीं पर हमारी सोसाइटी में लगा होगा, एंड आई विल प्लग इन एंड पे पर चार्ज?
So we live in a world of millennials and Gen Z now, right? And if you look at our, and I don't think like that. I don't know about you, but I'm from the earlier generation. And मेरे लिए we've always been taught कि भैया खरीद लो charging station and then you don't have to pay anyone. But आज के दिन क्या होता है ना? A lot of people are used to the service kind of culture, right? You have a service for everything. So a lot of people naturally think about amenities as services and not something that they will invest in and they will own it. And we've actually given both flavors. So we offer both flavors. So we have an OPEX model, which is, basically we're installing and then we take some, amount per charge. So it's per charging session actually that we take some amount, and then unit price जो है उसके ऊपर एक छोटा सा markup रहता है so that the charger can be maintained. But that's how we collect money back from the customers every time they charge. So you don't invest in a charger today, but you use this service, and over time we get a recover of money. The other part is, in institutional and B2B kind of businesses, right? There we're actually pushing companies and, organizations to invest in the chargers, because they usually have a very different kind of use cases as well. So if you talk about companies, like we've installed in a company, an IT company in Hinjewadi some time back, where from day one they told us that, we don't want to charge our employees any money. हमें देना है, फ्री में ही देना है, क्योंकि हमने जैसे एसी दिया हुआ फ्री में, हमको चार्जिंग स्टेशन भी फ्री में देना है. And that actually made us think, why would we then ever pitch them about, any OPEX model? So हमने बोला कि सर आप चार्जर खरीद लो, and then we've given them a captive solution जहाँ पे, we have this back-end portal where it's a self-service portal. Once you buy our equipment, you get access to that. There's an account created for you जहाँ पे आप जाके you can manage your stations. So जैसे आपके ऑफिस में 10 स्टेशन लगे हो, so you can go and add mobile numbers of all your employees whom you want them to, access for free. So if I go to that station, I will not be able to charge for free. तो मैं अपना कार्ड लगाऊंगा, so I will not be able to charge. क्यों? क्योंकि the company is offering that only for their employees. So they've added their employees there, and when their employees go to the charging station, वो charge करते free में. So in that case, they have bought the charging station. Now a lot of companies have actually bought charging stations. A lot of businesses have bought charging stations because, for them, the charge per use model is only effectively, it's only effective where there are lesser number of EVs. जहाँ पे already EVs है 10-15, so उनके लिए buying a charging station is always more cost efficient.
Right. Tell me one thing. Is this charging station good for all kinds of EVs, car, scooter, everything?
So all our products and services have been technically built as generic solutions, so we can charge every EV on the earth, and we can cater to every customer on the earth. So that's how we build our products and services. So we don't want to compete with an Ather and an Ola who have said, we will build something for ourselves. So if you look at Tesla, अगर आप Tesla को देख लो, now Tesla was early in the market, right? So they were the first EV company that actually successfully drove this business. And at the time, they had no option. So they had to build their own charging infrastructure. क्योंकि who else will make it for them? उनकी गाड़ियाँ थी, उन्होंने अपना बनाया हुआ. But if you look at Tesla today provides generic charging sockets on their vehicles. And they can charge now on charging station that we make as well. So I think that's where the market is going. So, eventually, I don't think any auto OEM is going to invest in charging station infrastructure. It's a very different business. Yeah. Service business भी बहुत अलग है. If you compare to a, auto OEM that is typically distribution and dealership kind of, channels, it's very different from a service kind of business. So I don't believe that auto OEMs are going to be successful in this business. It will only be generic solutions, and it will be interoperable solutions. तो उसका मतलब ये है कि let's say RJ Tarun is driving his EV in Pune, and आप goEgo network use करते हो, अगर आप north जाते हो and वहाँ पे goEgo network is not there, I will make sure that you can charge on one of my partner networks. Right. You should not be, sitting there and wondering कि मैं क्या करूँ, should I have to download another app? Right. So that kind of thing. So I think this is the end goal of our company.
Yeah. एक और चीज बहुत सारे लोगों के दिमाग में आ रही है that this also be a business opportunity for a lot of small business owners who have land or places in strategic locations जहाँ पर वो थोड़ा parking space दे सकते हैं और वहाँ पर एक ऐसा setup कर सकते हैं. Is this an opportunity as well for those people?
So this is definitely an opportunity. It's an upcoming business. There's a lot of opportunity here because आप सिर्फ गाड़ियों का number गिन के you can make out that what is the potential opportunity of EV charging. But let me also warn you that what happens is a lot of people think that I will put a charging station आज and कल से मेरा पैसा बनने लगेगा. That will not happen. Of course, location is going to be key. So जहाँ पे आपके पास अगर key locations है, of course that will be a this is a land grab kind of opportunity, right? So जहाँ पे आपका charging station नहीं लगा and आपके बगल वाले ने लगा दिया, then automatically he gets that opportunity. Because it's not a licensed business. Government has clearly said that charging infrastructure setup is not a licensed business, not like a petrol pump. आज
राइट,
अगर आप पेट्रोल पंप का देख लो कि आज पेट्रोल पंप 500 पेट्रोल पंप के लिए अगर निकलता है, so there are 50,000 people already in line to take those licenses.
राइट,
But charging stations के लिए government has completely abolished this license business, so you can actually start. So my advice would be people who have a bit of holding power in terms of holding their investment.
हाँ,
This is the right time to invest because it's early, and then they can really establish their locations as charging parks for various customers. So this will definitely be an opportunity for the ones who can hold on to their investment for the next 1.5 to 2 years.
right. While this technology is being built, the infrastructure is being built, और लोग जैसे आप देख रहे हैं, मैं तो पिछले कुछ साल से नोटिस कर रहा हूँ, जो ग्रीन नंबर प्लेट वाले व्हीकल्स है उनका नंबर लगातार बढ़ता जा रहा है. एंड नाउ विद द वे ऑल द बिग मैन्युफैक्चरिंग जायंट्स ऑफ आवर कंट्री, ऑटोमोबाइल जायंट्स आर फोकसिंग ऑन ईवी. इनफैक्ट टेस्ला का आपने नाम लिया, टेस्ला इज आल्सो ट्राइंग टू कम टू इंडिया. ये नंबर बढ़ने ही वाला है और एक्सपोनेंशियली बढ़ेगा. तो ऐसे में इफ यू सेट इट अप राइट नाउ और इन अ ईयर और टू, you'll have that first mover advantage also. लोगों को पता चल जाएगा कि इन इन जगहों पर होता है. सो एक वो फेवरेट जगह हो जाती है कि इस कैफे में जाकर के मैं शाम को 1 घंटा अपने दोस्तों से मिलता हूँ, कॉफी पीता हूँ, एंड वहां पर मेरा ईवी चार्ज हो जाता है. समथिंग लाइक दैट. एक और चीज मेरे दिमाग में आती है सायंतन, विच इज फॉर फास्टर चार्जिंग देयर वाज वंस अ टॉक अबाउट swapping the batteries. Is that still on? What is it? And why should I give my battery to somebody else?
Indeed. So I think this year in the budget as well, there was some the direction was to give some subsidies towards battery swapping, and they're also building a policy around it. So that this question comes up, it's very pertinent because it comes up very often now because government is also in that direction now. So let me tell you two things. So I'm telling you now my personal hypothesis, and maybe people will differ, but that's fine because that's part of our democracy process. So अगर आप देखो तो if you talk about battery swapping, now there are two challenges that I foresee. If you look at a technology platform, हमने जिस तरीके से backend वाला technology बनाया, it can service battery swapping products as well. We have not invested as a company in battery swapping stations primarily for these two reasons that I'm going to tell you about. एक है that I believe that the operating company of battery swapping is not going to be able to match up to the working capital needs for two reasons. अगर आप देखो कि अगर आपको battery swapping as a model आपको introduce करना है, I'm talking now from the business standpoint. The other point is indeed the customer standpoint. But अगर आप business standpoint से देखो, आज के दिन अगर मैंने battery swapping station का business start किया as an operating company, and I need to, let's say my potential clientele is 100 vehicles, 100 EV scooters, right? So I will have to have an inventory of battery of at least 1.5 to 2 times of that battery, 100 batteries. Why? Because अगर कोई गाड़ी आती है, so I need to have a fully charged battery to give it to him, right? Or
Yeah,
her.
yeah.
So अगर आप देखो, this battery costs 60%, 40 to 60% of the cost of the vehicle.
Is
And
that
अगर आज मुझे business करना है जिसमें मैं 2 times या 1.5x of number of batteries रखूं अपने पास, how will I make money? बाजू वाला charging station वाला can definitely give a cheaper solution to these guys. अब इसमें the bigger problem that battery swapping is today solving, and I'm also for it, not against it, that अभी initially अगर आप देखो, the vehicles have, they're very low end vehicles जो अभी इंडिया में भी चल रहे, जो two wheelers चल रहे, they are pretty low end, right? Most of them are, well, a lot of them are from a neighboring country, and they have actually assembled it here, and for them they need a solution. So
yeah,
these are very low end kind of solutions where the battery swapping makes sense. Because these batteries are very low density. They're not very high density batteries. They don't have a lot of power, and they need to be swapped very quickly because range कम है in batteries का. But अगर आप देखो आज के दिन, अगर आप you talk about the serious players. So today there are well over 700 companies in the EV two-wheeler space, startups and the likes of it. Now अगर आप 2 साल बाद देखो तो I think there will be a handful of serious players. And बड़े वाले तो आ ही रहे हैं. If you look at what Hero has announced, Bajaj has already launched the product. TVS का बहुत बहुत बढ़िया product है. We did a joint marketing campaign with TVS. In products में the batteries are going to be much more higher density and much more higher range. And वहाँ पे the weight of the battery itself is going to basically not not at least promote battery swapping. दूसरा जो प्रॉब्लम है जो आप बोल रहे थे कि मैंने गाड़ी नहीं ले ली, अगर आप कंज्यूमर मेंटालिटी देखो आज के दिन, अगर आपने गाड़ी खरीदी है, एंड मैं आपको बोलता हूँ कि सर जो सीट है ना वो मैं चेंज कर देता हूँ पुरानी गाड़ी का, So the first thing you will say, because this is something that you can touch and feel, right? गाड़ी के अंदर. Now if it's software, then you don't care, क्योंकि वो आपको दिखता नहीं है, आपको पता नहीं है वो क्या होता है अंदर. बट अगर आपको बैटरी में बोल दूं मैं निकाल के दूसरी गाड़ी का डाल दूं,
हाँ,
you will have a problem. Not that you paid for the battery, but of course the battery will have an impact on performance of your vehicle. अगर
right.
आपको किसी दिन बैटरी शॉपिंग स्टेशन से पुरानी बैटरी मिल जाती है, तो आपको एक्सपीरियंस वाइज आपका एक्सपीरियंस विल गो डाउन. नो डाउट सेम गाड़ी होगी, बट आपका रेंज कम हो जाएगा, आपको पावर कम मिलेगा. सो ऑल ऑफ दीज थिंग्स विल इम्पैक्ट यू नो इन द हेड. So
हाँ,
I think if you talk from consumer mentality perspective, I think people are not comfortable with that kind of model.
right.
Of course, it is going towards that, but I think the day this will be successful is जब आपको गाड़ी subscription पे मिलेगा.
हाँ,
Then it makes sense, because then it's not your vehicle.
right.
तो अगर आप like the likes of the shared mobility kind of solutions, वहाँ पे I think it probably makes sense. But in a personal vehicle space where you have bought the vehicle, I think battery is a critical part of the EV, and I
हाँ,
wouldn't trade it off and say कि मैं किसी और का बैटरी लगा के चला लेता हूँ.
right. एंड आई नो फॉर अ फैक्ट दैट इंडिया में ऐसा बहुत हो सकता है, मेरा बैटरी पुराना हो रहा है, मैं जाके स्वैप करवा के लाऊं, अगर मेरे को अच्छा बैटरी मिल जाए, आई एम नेवर गोइंग बैक टू दैट प्लेस. यू नो, आई एम
होता है.
गोना यूज
But the company itself doesn't ask you to not do it. This is a accepted legal behavior. You can take another battery and say कि मैं जाऊंगा ही नहीं.
या.
होगा, and it will happen. Consumer mentality is like that.
बट आई रियली लाइक योर पॉइंट वेयर यू आर सेइंग कि भाई अगर आपके घर के नीचे गाड़ी खड़ा है, it's there for hours. You can just have a charging facility वहां पर, या फिर आपके ऑफिस के नीचे चार्जिंग फैसिलिटी होगा. आप किसी भी रेस्टोरेंट में, कैफेज में, मॉल्स में, पार्किंग्स में, कहीं भी जाते हैं, द फ्यूचर इज जब सब जगह पर आपको ये चार्जिंग स्टेशंस दिखाई देंगे. एंड गो ईगो हैज टेकन दिस बिग टास्क. मतलब इंडिया इज अ बिग वास्ट कंट्री, और द नंबर ऑफ व्हीकल्स इज गोइंग टू एक्सपोनेंशियली इंक्रीज. वो कहते हैं ना कि वैल्यू माइग्रेशन जो टर्म है, कि यहाँ से अब वो आइस व्हीकल्स में से, आईसीई इंजन से अब इस तरफ मूव होने वाला है. we've already seen the kind of giant factories that companies like Ola is setting up, and the way Tatas are now determined to make bigger, better uh, vehicles. And Elon Musk is tweeting directly at Prime Minister saying, iska kuch kar do. So how are you gearing yourself up to build so many charging stations? और इंडिया में ही बना रहे हैं आप, और it's quite a make in India thing that you're doing. उसके बारे में बताइए.
Sure. So, Tarun, you're absolutely right. So, if you talk about the future of fuel stations, right, they're going to be cafes, malls. That's going to be your fuel station in the future. That's exactly how it's going to plan out, right? So, जैसे आप बोल रहे हो कि when you're out with friends having coffee, that's your fuel station.
Yeah.
गाड़ी आपका चार्ज हो रहा है ना, आप वहाँ बैठ के दोस्तों के साथ drinking coffee, right? That's going to happen. It's just a behavioral change, and like I always believe that consumer behavior is value driven. So our value, though, the consumer is going to move towards that, because it's a no-brainer. Economically, it's a cheaper mode of transport. अगर आप देखो, there are there's substantially lower moving parts, because engine के parts है ही नहीं गाड़ी में. There's a motor, and motor technology is not new.
Yeah.
जो आपकी drive train है electric vehicle की, though that's not new technology. It's now getting more and more advanced, but it's a very well established old technology. बैटरी वाला जो टेक्नोलॉजी है, that is now still evolving, क्योंकि बैटरी का इतना डिमांड था ही नहीं कभी. So, but I have no doubt कि in the next 5 years, अगर आप देखो the kind of commitments जैसे आप बोल रहे हो, companies have made. If you look at the global auto EMs, the big five in Germany, right? They have all fully committed their R&D to electric vehicle platform. They have said we are not going to invest any more R&D money on IC vehicles, right?
Oh.
So that's big money. अगर आप उनकी बात करो, they themselves, in a year, they're spending more than 1.3 trillion euros. Now that kind of money जब इस इंडस्ट्री में आता है टेक्नोलॉजी वाइज, तो आपके जो प्रॉब्लम्स है बैटरी स्वैपिंग के वगैरह आप बोल रहे थे अभी थोड़ी देर पहले, बैटरी डेंसिटी will just massively increase, chemistries will change. You will probably get batteries very soon in the next 2 years, which will basically give you a range of 1,000 kilometers. That's as good as filling your petrol car, right? आपको 700-600 किलोमीटर मिलता है आज के दिन. So that is all coming, and there's no doubt, because it's facts. It's already happening. Now the problem that you stated is fast charging, right? आप बोल रहे थे कि DC वाला जो आप बोल रहे थे fast charging का. Now if you talk about fast charging, of course fast charging is needed, and the tendency is people say कि मुझे तो fast charging करना है, and then there is this theory about fast charging degrades the life of your battery. All of this is true. So now what happens is, I'll tell you how and this is all factual evidence. आप Google करोगे तो आपको मिल जाएगा. Tesla, published a white paper 2 years back. जहाँ पे उन्होंने क्या किया? They took one car which they only fast charged for 2 years, and then they took another car which they only slow charged for 2 years. Sorry, not 2 years. I think it was 18 months. And then they compared the two cars का battery का health, and they couldn't find a big difference. There was slight degradation on the battery of the DC charging वाला जो गाड़ी था. But the point I'm trying to make is कि गाड़ी का life itself is around 8 to 10 years. उससे ज़्यादा you can't drive the car. जो metal है आपका chassis है, nothing will last after 10 years. If you're driving the car substantially. So the white paper actually evidenced that जो आपका battery का degradation है, it is not to the extent कि आपकी गाड़ी के lifetime के beyond it's going to have any it will have a impact beyond the lifetime of your car. So it was basically a non-issue. That's what they kind of actually published. अब इसमें क्या होता है मैं आपको बताता हूँ. जो केमिकल रिएक्शन है, बैटरी जब चार्ज हो रही है आपके आपके फोन का भी होता है. इफ यू लुक एट योर फोन, आपने चार्जिंग में लगा दिया, यू विल सी इट हीट्स अप, गर्म होता है, बिकॉज़ एनर्जी गेट्स डिसिपेटेड. दिस इज जस्ट नॉर्मल रिएक्शन, राइट? केमिकल रिएक्शन. बैटरी में भी, गाड़ी की बैटरी में भी वही होता है. Now the point is that with software today, right, a lot of companies have built something. There's a electronic device called as battery management system जो गाड़ी के अंदर होता है, that actually makes sure that battery ठीक से charge हो रहा है, ठीक से discharge हो रहा है. It monitors that part. It's responsible for making sure कि battery ठीक से charge हो गाड़ी का. अब उसमें there is software. And आज I'll tell you, and this is because I'm from the industry, I can tell you already because I read a lot about what's coming. With software and software algorithms, आज battery charging cycles have substantially, the time has substantially reduced. Why? Because it's just a software. पहले क्या होता है? I'll just give you a very layman's term में simple example. पहले क्या होता था? एक बैटरी आप अगर देखोगे the square box, उसके अंदर there are cells, right? They're like pencil cells जैसे cells arranged रहते हैं. And पहले initially जो गाड़ियाँ चार्ज होती थी, वो बैटरी मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम क्या करता है? एक तरफ से चार्ज डालता था, and it used to serially charge everything. तो जो early cells हैं, they used to get charged very fast. And then full हो जाते थे because पीछे के cells अभी भी बाकी है, and then they had to reduce the power because otherwise these cells will get destroyed. अब क्या होता है? With software they actually intelligently manage at the cell level, so they make sure and they parallelly charge, so the battery gets charged much faster. And on the other hand, अगर आप देखो last 3 साल में 4 साल में battery ranges have substantially gone up because of the density of the battery. It's just, and उसमें there are 2 or 3 things that have to be taken care of. One is the mechanical fitment. उसमें भी you can actually gain range. Just the way you fit the mechanical, the battery's cells, and the cooling mechanism inside, because there's also cooling pipes inside the battery जो ठंडा करते रहता है cells को. So just that is one aspect of it, and दूसरा है the chemistry itself is improving. There's so much of research and so many smart people working on it. धरती पे we have a lot of smart engineers, so it's just a matter of giving them money and they'll find the solution for us. We don't need to break our heads on it. So all these trends are real, and ये हो रहा है. अगर आप पिछले 5 साल, if you want to go back and see, you will see that today आज जो Tesla Model 3 है 700-800 किलोमीटर का रेंज दे रहा है, and they can charge at there are cars today like the iPace are in India. There's a company called Hyundai जो they're getting a car called iPace. It charges on 3-phase. Now 3-phase में गाड़ी के अंदर it charges on board on 3-phase. So these cars can actually are now capable of charging at massively high speeds without degrading the battery. So it's just a technology problem, and there are enough smart people in this world to solve these problems. So that's why I believe that battery swapping is an early kind of solution, but it's just a technical solution where they're saying that आपका speed of charging I'm increasing by just swapping a battery. Right. The day that problem is solved technically, battery swapping does not exist.
Right. So how and where are you building this technology, all these charging stations? You're doing it all in India. Where and how?
Yes. So we have a small R&D setup in the Netherlands. That's where I was based earlier. So we have our head of strategy for products there sitting based out of the Netherlands. It's a conscious decision we made because we also get a lot of insights into the future of this industry from Europe and from the West, because they've started a bit earlier. But I still strongly believe that India is today on a level playing ground. If you look at the products that we've made already in India, unlike the IC vehicles, right, जिसमें 20-30 साल लगे to build global quality products. Like if you look at the products from Mahindra, from Tata, they're absolutely global quality today. But अगर आप देखो, it took 20 years, 30 years to do that. in the EV space, I think we are all on a level playing ground. So India has massive potential. I have no doubt that today, if we don't take this opportunity, this is a once in a millennium kind of opportunity that you're now going to disrupt the entire transportation sector, right? In terms of auto vehicles, and India is today at the start as well. And if you look at India's prowess, right? Today, we've been servicing the world on IT for the last 20 years, 25 years, right? So we have a lot of good software engineers, we have a lot of good mechanical engineers. So India has a lot of potential, and that's why जब हमने goEgo network start किया, हमारा first day से day one से all three partners we had this, the intention was कि हमें set up करना है India में mother entity, and then we had a small R&D setup in Netherlands, but we wanted to base our company out of the Netherlands. We've been lucky. Last year, when we got our seed investment, we've been invested with we had a strategic investment with a big automobile ancillary group. So they make a lot of electronic components for automobile for the last 30 years. So they've been a very good match for us. And we have actually set up the factory in Aurangabad in Maharashtra. It's a massive 35,000 square feet factory. And I think today, if you look at our business, there are a lot of companies that have set up factories. People who come from industrial switchgear, जो पहले से बनाते थे, boxes around electrical, industrial electronics and stuff like that. But we have this facility dedicated to EV charging stations, and it has a capacity today to make more than 20,000 chargers a month. Of course, we don't utilize that capacity yet, but we have the capacity to grow our line. So today we are operating one line, and so we started our first line in September last year, and then we launched our products. The products started getting deployed in November. Late November, we started deploying it in the market. So पहला lot हमारा निकला था pilot batch का in September last year, and we've already started the second line now, and we can grow to around 30 lines in that facility.
Wow, very, very impressive. So I think as India is gearing up for getting more and more EVs, by the time we pick the pace up, you'll be able to provide all that we need in terms of battery charging infrastructure. I'm very assured of that after talking to you. You're also doing some very cool things like सबसे highest EV station आपने लगा दिया है, वो क्या है जरा बताइए?
So what we did is, there was when we came back to India. I came back last year, and what happens is a lot of people think about EVs as golf carts, because that's what we have seen, right? तो लोगों को लगता है यार EV मतलब ये वो golf course के अंदर घूमने वाला गाड़ी है, it can't do much. So I was sitting with my team one day, and we were discussing this topic, or just generally over lunch, and I told him, can we really do something radical? कि ये सवाल आना ही नहीं चाहिए. People should not ask this question. And then a couple of the folks they came up with this. What is the most difficult motorable road? वहाँ पे we should drive an EV. Now we don't make EVs. हमारे पास we don't have an EV. But EV चलने के लिए we will need a charging station in those heights, right? तो हमने कहा देखो भैया, we can solve the problem of putting up the charging stations, but we need to partner with someone who's in the EV product, right? In the EV auto space. And that's when we started talking to a few companies, and then we ended up with TVS. TVS was very proactively supporting this cause as well, and they said, yeah, we should do this. And they told us, why do it with a car? Because we were talking internally, and we said, why not do it with a two-wheeler? Because then it's going to even further challenge the norm that people can't do it. And then last but not the least, I'm not I'm not making a sexist remark, but we wanted to do it with two young females. We said how to make it even more unbelievable. So we said we will have two female riders riding scooters up that highest motorable road, and we've installed the charging station at Kaza Valley as well as on the route where we had the record for the highest charging station. It's right next to the highest post office of the world. So uske bagal mein we wanted to make a statement there, and I think that worked well because I get a lot of comments back from people who've seen that video, and they say that that initial fear has gone away, and when they hear the drivers talking, the riders who spoke about their experience, it has been totally positive, right? And they spoke about it, and they said that we were riding through that valley, and we could hear there was no sound, so they could hear the sound of nature. And that's amazing, right? Because that's not something anybody has experienced. And this was first hand account from the people who actually did. I wasn't there, so I also only heard it. But I think that was the objective. We wanted to seriously challenge that norm that EVs are just or not capable. So we wanted to challenge that.
This is breaking the bias and the Purana mentality on many levels in true sense. I'm glad that you're doing it. एक दो और सवाल मेरे दिमाग में आ रहे हैं, which is first one being, you have been a consumer of this technology for a while. Of course, now you are an active part of the community that's building the whole infrastructure. Uh, if somebody has to, had to switch from a normal ICE engine scooter or a car, uh, क्या चीजें हैं, what are the tips as a user of a car like that, and as a user of the technology and as a developer of the technology, हम पूछते हैं ना कि गाड़ी खरीदने से पहले क्या बातों का ध्यान रखना चाहिए इन द नॉर्मल ऑटोमोबाइल। सो बैटरी इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल में अगर कुछ किसी को खरीदना है उससे पहले, इन टर्म्स ऑफ बैटरी या इन टर्म्स ऑफ व्हीकल यूसेज ऑल्सो, आपकी तीन चार चीजें जो आपको लगता है कि लोगों को हमेशा ध्यान रखनी चाहिए।
So see, I think today there are lesser options. आज अगर आप यूरोप में रहो तो आपके पास 40 you have 40 models of EVs to choose from. And buying an EV is not a point of contention anymore. Nobody thinks about it. It's just the obvious decision now in certain parts of the world. तो मैं ये कहूँगा कि for people, of course, in India, the awareness is still growing, and I think people like you will definitely be able to help in that cause, because when I talk, I think there are 10 people listening. When you talk, there are probably 1,000. So you guys have to play a role there. But what I do understand is anybody who rides an EV, and of course when मैं EV बोल रहा हूँ, I'm talking about a decent product, not एकदम basic वाला product. So basic वाले product में it is not about the EV problem. It is about everything else as well. क्योंकि आपका चेसी वगैरह सब कुछ साइकिल टाइप का बना हुआ है, you don't get that right suspension, so that gives the overall feeling that EV is not for me. But अगर आप अच्छे products चलाओगे, the better products, अगर आप गाड़ियाँ चलाओगे, I can talk about what you asked me and I can talk the whole day about it, but my advice to your viewers will be कि आप एक बार ही जाके test ride, you drive the vehicle, and I can tell you that that's how it happened to me as well. जब मैं पहली बार बैठा and I experienced it first hand, I didn't have to go and ask this question anymore because it's an obvious one. अगर आप, and I know a lot of my female friends, my friends from school, from college, and I talk to them, and I have given them my vehicles to ride, and every female, for instance, right, has said that this is just so much easier to ride because there's no vibration, there's no mechanical parts, there's no oil filling, things that females hate to think about, right?
I
तो
hate
आपके पास today you have a mode of transport जहाँ पे आपको ये सब सोचना ही नहीं है. It's just a smart vehicle. You go and plug it in, it charges, and you ride it. Versus अगर आप पुरानी गाड़ियाँ देख लो, for females especially, they would be lost, right? Because they hate understand opening the bonnet and understanding what's gone wrong. So इसमें that problem is completely gone. So I think it's just a human behavioral change which will come.
वो जो
But it will take
इंटरनल
some time.
कंबस्शन है ना, वो बहुत ही बड़ा लंबा चौड़ा, बड़ा ही, मतलब अब उसको बहुत रिफाइन कर दिया गया है ओवर द इयर्स, डेकेड्स जो उस पे काम हुआ है। तब हमारी गाड़ियां थोड़ा कम आवाजें करती हैं, बट it has to go, the technology has to change in a way that in the way that's never been done before. मैं कहीं ये पढ़ रहा था कि हेनरी फोर्ड अगर चाहते कि पुरानी टेक्नोलॉजी को कब तक आप इम्प्रूव करते रहोगे, फास्टर हॉर्स कार्ट wouldn't have been a solution. A new car was the solution to that problem. So if we want to now move to a next phase of all this, it has to change at the very basic of it. So the internal combustion engine has to go, and these new, there's no engine in it. The new technology has just the motor, and it's powered by a very high performance battery. That is the way to go. It's silent, it's better for environment, it's just easy to manage, which is something that I absolutely love. I don't like the repair work that goes in the old cars, the traditional, changing the oil so often, and there's a lot of problems in it. And we're definitely looking forward to getting a proper infrastructure in place where we can just have all these things in place. And I would like to thank you, Sayantan, for creating this in our country, for taking the lead, for taking that initiative years ago and creating this company called goEgo. Is there anything that you want to say as parting words, as your message, जो हम अभी इस इंटरव्यू को अगर 5 साल बाद देखे तो हमको मैं बोलूँगा देखो सयंतन ने बोला था।
Well, I will not. I will avoid the typical things that people say that we are doing it for our future generations. I strongly believe, not because I'm in this industry, that we have to give value to the customer and they will opt for this. It's not that I will tell a customer कि आप अपने बच्चों के लिए करो, because consumer behavior doesn't drive like that. In the end, we are all selfish, if I can say. But human behavior is such that we will, you'll have to give them something worthwhile for our customers to switch to EVs. And I think we have taken the right steps in that direction. I think our products, our services are totally seamless. We have not kept it very fancy. अगर आपके पास मोबाइल में मेरा, if you don't have the goEgo app and आप मेरे charging station के सामने हो with your EV, you don't need to download that. We have given a browser-based solution. आप QR code scan करो, तो QR कोड जब स्कैन होता है तो मोबाइल के अंदर भी चेक, अगर आपके पास ऐप नहीं हो, हम ब्राउजर खोल के डायरेक्टली आपको पेमेंट गेटवे में ऑप्शन दे देते हैं कि सर आप चार्ज कर लीजिए आपका 200-300 रुपए का, and then we start charging. So you can start charging right away in 2 minutes. You don't need our app. So we have really thought about these kind of aspects of the service that we are providing. We have not kept it very fancy. The idea is to have a very simple and seamless and fun experience for the next generations to start using these kind of infrastructure. So I think that's been our at least motto. And I'll just close by saying, Tarun, that we started this new mission. It's not out yet, but I'm now already sharing it with the audiences. I think by the time this is aired, probably we are already live. We've started a mission called Mission 2 Degrees Down. Now, one of the biggest challenges with the cities that we live in today, right, is automobiles are inside the city. They're not industries that are situated outside. So the immediate threat from pollutants out of the tailpipes is just within our vicinity. And one of the conscious efforts that we are taking is that we called our mission 2 degrees down, where we want to reduce the temperature of our cities, starting with Pune, by 2 degrees, and we would need more and more community support in that respect. And I think that's something it's not a dream, but I'm sure we will be able to do it. We just need the support from more and more people to help us achieve those goals.
Yeah. 2 degrees less. I mean, amen to that, man. The way the cities are heating up and the whole world is heating up. Sayantan, thank you so much for talking to us. And if somebody wants to know more about goEgo, the work that you've been doing, of course, your website is away. Could you please tell us the coordinates and where all can people check more about this?
Sure. So you can find us on goego.in or goegonetwork.com. That's our website. The goEgo network handle we use for all the social media platforms. We are on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Insta, on Twitter. The same handle. And I would advise your viewers to view our YouTube channel, which is again goEgo Network. We keep putting up a lot of informative videos. I think knowledge is one area where people struggle. So please, I would encourage your viewers to go to that YouTube channel. You'll see a lot of simple, small videos where we talk about our charging stations, how to use them, what are the benefits of using an EV, and we don't talk about green earth yet, because I think that's an obvious one. I think we're all conscious of it. We're all educated people, so I don't need to tutor people about that. But we really talk about EVs and the things around it. And I hope you guys enjoy those videos. And our team is open to feedback, so definitely put your comments in, and we'll try to only improve over time.
Right, Sayantan, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thanks, Tarun. It was a pleasure being there. Bye.